What's up, Canes fans? Welcome into this edition of the CanesInSight podcast. I am your host, Peter Ariz, alongside D Money, who everybody wants to hear from because he just dropped his latest edition of The Bank that you can catch on CanesInsight.com. D Money, welcome in.
Happy to be on. A lot of action going on, a lot of excitement. We got a lot of new people subscribing after your episode with the Miami Gardens Ravens. Awesome episode of your live. I believe it was on Monday. The replay's on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You get that kind of content, 30 minutes with multiple Miami commits, some great players, great kids from the Miami Gardens Ravens program. And really enjoyed that. Chance Robinson, JoJo Trader, Vince Shavers. Really just an awesome show you guys did. So like and subscribe. CanesInsight.com forum. Sign up. The thing is going insane right now. Like I said, I dropped the bank. A lot of exclusive recruiting nuggets on there. We're also going to be taking questions from the posters on Canes Insight. I'm going through it now. So 15,000 views, 135 replies to the bank that posted this afternoon. So it moves fast. Check out CanesInsight.com. Sign up for the forums.
So let's just get right into the bank. Obviously, again, this is available on the front page of the website, on the forums, as you said, and I posted some snippets of it on social media as well, but there's more than what we posted on social media. So obviously the Canes are hot after the JoJo Trader and Octavius Jones pickups, but there's a lot of discussion on the boards about Jalen Hayward, cornerback out of Rockledge, D. And it seems like an interesting situation there. I don't know how much you can actually get into what's going on there behind the scenes, but if you wanted to just get into him and his process right now.
Sure. So this is Wednesday. Things change. This may move very quickly once decisions are made. But Jalen Hayward from Rockledge, decommitted from Georgia. This is a safety/corner prospect. Miami's recruiting him as a corner. He's got really good speed. I think he's timed as low as 10.6, probably more of a 10.8 kid. Very physical, good size. Again, Miami projects him at corner. Has very great reports on people who've been out there and seen him. The guy's just a great athlete, great player. And Miami's doing their due diligence on him as far as what happened at Georgia, the decommit, et cetera. And they're going to do what's best for the program. Again, they have a really high grade on the kid. They're going to do their due diligence, and if they like what they find out, you could see this move quickly. And I think Jalen Hayward has a lot of interest in the Miami Hurricanes. So that's the best I could tell you here. July 19th, as we record this, we'll see what happens. But this is not a situation where Hayward is off Miami's board or that Hayward's commitment is imminent. It's due diligence and interest for sure.
A couple guys we get a lot of questions about on the boards and on the live shows that we do. D-tackle Cam Franklin and safety Zaquan Patterson, who, of course, another guy who played on that Miami Gardens Ravens team growing up. You seem to think that the Canes are in a good spot with both.
Yeah, if you're looking at the next big commitments, and these are not guys that are silently committed, and I'm just saying, hey, coyly saying, wait. Like with Trader and Jones, we knew those were coming. I'm not saying these guys are locked up by any means, but Franklin's coming to the barbecue at the end of the month with his grandma. This is, I think, his 5th or 6th time on campus. I think Miami feels excellent about where they are there. I would expect, if I had to pick, we don't do crystal balls or whatever. We were doing predictions. I like Miami for Camarion Franklin. And then Zaquan Patterson, a lot of momentum with him. I've said for a few months now that Miami's felt good about where they are. They feel even better now. Teammates committed. So I like where Miami is with Zaquan Patterson. And if he was the next commit, it would not surprise me. Or if he commits, pretty soon. So those are 2 top 100 players. Miami gets those guys in the can. Now you got 4 top 100 committed. 5 top 100 players committed between Marquise Lightfoot, Kevin Riley, JoJo Trader, Patterson, and Franklin. So that would be a pretty good place to be. There's not many years you can go back. If you go back the past 20 years or so in recruiting, you don't have that many classes with 5 top 100 players in them to begin with. So that 5 top 100 players now, before you even start winning games, hopefully on the field, I think that leave Miami in a good position to really rise in the rankings.
Definitely, we'll bump them up a few spots to get a couple of those top 100 guys. Moving on, you had an interesting nugget, not about any prospect in particular, but just kind of showing how the landscape's changed in terms of visits. And because in the past, obviously, if a player is interested in Miami and you see him set up all these visits elsewhere, you tend to get a little nervous. I'm not saying that that still shouldn't be the case in some situations, but you kind of explained why the NIL era has changed that somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, there are third parties, agents, you know, Pete. I mean, speak from experience. I mean, part of what these kids are hearing is go to visits, get your NIL value up, and then go to the place you want to go anyways. That's the message. So you're seeing that a lot. And the key here is the timing of the kid and the timing of the program to meet at the same time. And it's kind of hard to predict when that happens. You can know that a kid is in a great spot with the school and not know when the timing is right. You know, we got the tip on Trader a week early, but before that, no one knew Trader was going to be committing shortly. It just kind of matches up. It's hard to predict. But part of this is there's a lot of process. The NIL has added a level of process and strategy to this on both sides that is different than in the past. So some things that you may read into one way is really an NIL deal. So at the end of the day, at least with Miami has a very strong NIL program. They're going to recruit these kids relationships. And if they recruit the way they do and build a relationship the way they do and perform, they're going to get a lot of top kids. Or they might keep the kids they get and add on more.
It seems like there's been less worry about the NIL program at Miami over the past few weeks, right? There was a lot of questions, a lot of stuff being asked on the boards about where Miami was in the landscape. And I've said it myself, again, knowing some things that go on behind the scenes. I haven't heard of one case where Miami just flat out lost a kid because of NIL. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, right? But there have not been any egregious missed opportunities for Miami in terms of them botching something on the NIL side, right? I'm sure someone has a story, but that's my perspective from it. And if you're the Canes staff, you got to just keep this positive momentum going, and those questions will continue to go away. Yes. So moving on to Lil Wayne McCoy, another guy who is part of that crew that, again, if you missed the live show, the special edition, again, shout out to Brad Tejeda, who set that up on Monday night, had those guys on the show, and Lil Wayne McCoy was not on the show, but he's a guy who is one of them as well.
Yeah, and it was one of those things, you know, people start talking to each other, the eyeball emojis start popping up. My understanding with this is it was never to the point that maybe people thought where it was a done deal. I think from Miami's perspective, if the kid wants to flip to Miami, Miami will take him in a heartbeat, and you will see him committed to Miami. So when you see him committed to Miami, that's when it'll happen. I don't see a situation where he's going to flip, commit, and they're going to sit on it for a long period of time. And they're not going to tell him, don't commit. They want him. So really, the ball's in McCoy's court as far as if he wants to come to Miami, just pick up the phone and call. And I think Miami would love to have him in the fold. But right now he's committed to Florida State. I know there's other schools poking around there. So let's see where that process goes. I don't think it's not a situation where he said, hey, I want to go to Miami. And they said, no, wait a minute. You know, or he's committed already and they're just waiting on some kind of big occasion to bring it out. Yeah, I don't think it's either of those two situations. I think Miami likes him. They take him in a heartbeat. He's still doing what he's doing. And if he's ready to flip to Miami, we'll find out pretty quick.
Shifting gears to the offensive line position, taking a look at a couple guys that you've mentioned in this update on the bank. Pierre Luis, a guy that we have not necessarily heard his name come up much in recent months, but you say that he's a guy the staff has been very high on, and he's kind of circling back now and showing some more interest.
Yeah, 247 composite player from Tampa. This is a big dude, 330 plus, I think. He runs the 100 meters. You know, you have video of him running.
Saw that, yeah.
On his highlights, he's running down DBs that get picks, and he's running them down, big guy. So he's got a lot of speed, a lot of athletic ability, barrel-chested kind of dude. Because the communication picked up after Miami missed out on a couple center targets, the perception is, Miami lost out on Joey Yanada. They need a center. Maybe they're circling back with Pierre Luis. And I asked, and what I was told is this guy's been high on the board. Originally, when they were recruiting, the plan was to have Yanada at center, another Tampa guy, and then Pierre Luis at guard. Yanada ended up, Alabama saw the eval that Miami did, came in, liked him too, got him, and now it leaves Pierre Luis. So Miami would take him in a heartbeat. He's another one. If he wants to come down, they would be happy to host him for the barbecue. I don't think any of that's set up, but Miami likes him, and they like him at guard or at center. So he could potentially be the center that Miami needs. He'd fit right in. He's a shorter kind of guy, certainly fast and athletic, but we'll see. They want him, and if he continues to show interest, that'd be someone to watch to potentially be added to Juan Minaya and Derek Plaz in this recruiting class.
Well, it won't be as star-studded as it was last year at that position, but if you can land him along with the next guy we're going to talk about, Andrea Fua, out of the Seattle area, and then you pair it, like you said, with a couple of those high upside guys already in the class. Just looking at Andrea Fua's situation, you compared it to Francis's recruitment last year a little bit. You feel like the Canes are in a good spot.
He's known Cristobal and Mirabal for a long time. He trusts what they can do development-wise. He sees what happened with a guy like Penei Sewell. He sees Francis Malgoa is already starting. So there's that kind of trust factor with not only the people involved, but also the path. And, trust is huge. All these kids, they talk about trust is huge for them. And that sort of, beyond the fancy cars or whatever it is, they need to believe the people they're dealing with and have that respect. And they had that with Cristobal. And then, of course, the track record offensive line. So I think Ofu is a guy that Miami, I would say, leads for at this point. The timeline, he said he wanted to take some visits, maybe a USC. Again, it's about having the player timeline match with the team's timeline. But I think Miami feels good about where they're at with him. They've done great work, great visit. Family has great relationships. They want him bad. Super high on the board. I think he's the number 2 offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman in the country, according to Composite. So they'd love to land him. Relationships usually win the day. And I think Miami's in a very good spot. From everything I'm told from multiple sources, Miami is leading that recruitment as we sit here today.
Couple quick hitters on targets that Miami's been on for a while. Chris Cole and Aiden Breeland. How's it looking there? Has anything really changed from the last time you've updated the fans?
Same thing as far as 2 kids that really like Miami. You hear Cole talking about maybe visiting Alabama or some other schools. I don't know if Breeland's talked about other visits, but it's not like he has a timeline set of committing. So kids that like Miami, relationships. I think Breeland, Mario Cristobal was his first offer at Oregon. Cole, obviously, his uncle, Rohan Marley, former Cane. So relationship-wise, you're good with those guys. Super high on the board. Both of them, linebacker Chris Cole out of Salem, Virginia, top 100 player. Aiden Breeland, I think he's number 5 or 6 on the 247. He's my personal favorite of the defensive tackles, just from his twitch and explosiveness out of Los Angeles. So those 2 guys are guys Miami would love to have and are going to recruit like crazy. And it's just a matter of their process and how it's going to play out. I think Cole, Miami's probably further along there in terms of standing out against the competition. Breeland, it's really a neck and neck race. You got Georgia in there. You got Oregon in there. I think Cole, you just saw Georgia. They just got a crystal ball, I believe, for a 5-star linebacker. I don't know if he ended up committing to Georgia. He may have, Justin Williams. But I like where Miami stands with Cole. He's another guy that if the timing works out, he could be one of the next commits to the Canes. Or maybe he stretches this out for another, who knows?
Dylan Stewart, you could say he's arguably the highest profile guy nationally that Miami is recruiting right now. There's been some Ohio State buzz for a while and some crystal balls recently, but it seems like Miami feels like they're still in this thing.
Yeah, Miami likes the relationship there. They want him bad. I think he's the number 1 overall player on the board, close to it. And they're going to fight. They're in the fight, and they're going to fight. Their view of the Ohio State crystal ball is, they don't read too much into it. Look, Stewart, I'm sure, told Ohio State good things. He's told everybody good things. If he wanted to go to Ohio State, he'd be there already. So that one, I think, is going to be more of a slugfest over these next maybe a month or two. He might be one of those that commits, but it's going to be somewhat soon, but it's going to be a real battle until that date. And Miami thinks they're right in the mix there.
So you had an interesting nugget on Octavius Jones. I guess there's something floating around that he has grade problems, but you put that to rest pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think it's the Gator boards were spreading that. As I understand, no worries from Miami's standpoint with Octavius Jones, and they were talking about him being 280. Miami has him at 310. Babyface, a lot of growth still to come. He's a state champion power lifter. He's a very good basketball player. I think he was 11-8 on the hardwood. Played receiver, played running back, or at least he was coming getting end arounds. H-back, tight end, willing blocker, great effort player, and then dominant defensive tackle film. So he's the kind of guy. The feedback I got on him is he's the kind of guy that comes and plays on Sunday. And he mentioned, or the person I spoke to mentioned Josh Horton as another one like that. Young guy, super athletic, develop later, probably underrated, even though he had some big schools after him. So those two together, very formidable athletic pair of defensive tackles for Miami to build around.
Taking a look at something team related, you had an interesting note regarding Robbie Washington potentially toying with the idea of playing defense, playing at the corner position, which you've mentioned before as something that you thought could be a high upside move for him down the line. What are you hearing there?
I think it's going to be up to Robbie. I don't think Miami's going to say you have to play this or that. I think they love him at receiver. They love him at corner. It's going to be up to Robbie. I don't think, based on the latest info I had, that's something that's imminent. Like he's all right, I'm going to play corner. I think he's probably, what I understand, he's still very much focused on playing wide receiver. But a lot of people, and you could put my name on this as well, believe his highest upside is at corner with his physicality, his ability to strike, which you saw in spurts when he was at Killian and Palmetto, speed, movement ability. I'm told he's played around at corner in practice, and in those limited glimpses, you say, wow, you could just seeing him out there with your other corners and your receivers, he stands out on Green Tree at that position. So I'm a big believer in moving your best athletes to defense if you can. Jimmy Johnson did that. A lot of people say, oh, if you have a playmaker, why would you ever move him? Well, Sean Taylor had the touchdown record in Florida for, I believe, until Derrick Henry broke it, so more than a decade. Phillip Buchanan, Antro Roll, those guys are scoring touchdowns left and right. We need more guys that can play on offense, but play on defense because you want your athletes there. I think Washington would be, but that's not something I don't think he's made that decision yet. It's going to come down to his decision. They're happy to let him play a wide receiver. That's where he wants to play and see what he's got there.
Yeah, he would be a nasty nickel corner, I think, with his feistiness, like you said. And I've mentioned it multiple times on this show that's always something that stood out to me when I watched him in high school and you would watch him in person, is he had a mouth on him, right? And he had that intimidating presence, although he wasn't the biggest guy on the field, obviously, but he brought that physical nature to the offensive side of the ball.
Well, you saw him a bunch. I saw him in kind of a camp, more of a 7-on-7 setting. He looked to me like almost 5'11", 5'10". I mean, his brother's
Yeah, he's not
6'3".
short. I saw him the other day, not too far from me, and he was not short. He's not short. He's 5'11" is probably right, and he's got some good weight on him now too. I mean, remember, he's been there since January, and he's been in the program. So I think he's someone who, without a doubt, if he wanted to make that switch. But again, like you said, this could all be premature. He could go out there early in camp and be making plays left and right on the offensive side of the ball. And it's like, why would we do anything? Why would we switch him? Unless it's an absolute necessity, right? Which may be speaking to another issue, right? Which we understand the corner spot is going to be, there's going to be a lot of moving parts there trying to figure out who's going to step up and be the guys. But that's a whole nother discussion for another day. Moving forward here, talking about a guy who is kind of a forgotten man in the class after Kevin Riley's commitment, Chris Wheatley-Humphrey, Broward kid, ton of speed. But talking about these position changes, he actually had an impressive performance at camp.
Yeah, he went both ways. He got an interception. I want to say he was covering Trader, just JoJo Trader, Miami's recent 5-star commit at the Miami camp when he got the interception. Maybe it was McCoy. It was one of those two. So look great at corner, look great at running back. Miami thinks he's a major playmaker in a spread offense, but he also has high potential at corner. What's going to be interesting is, are we going to see more of these corners play corner/running backs play defense after seeing what the corners are making in the pros, especially for these little running backs? You know, Johnson, who's one of the best players we ever saw at University of Miami, as far as at Miami, goes to the pros, still a good player, but it's, limits him without having that great 4.3 speed. We saw him in high school as a corner, and he was fast enough to play corner, had long arms, strong hands, but was like an absolute missile. I mean, he was a better, bigger, better version of Trajan Bandy, in my opinion. Even more of a playmaker than that. He to me was all day NFL corner, and had some real ability there. So that's something that's gonna be interesting. You saw Sham Shields. He's kind of the classic one. Is, are you going to see guys switch from? Now, Shields was not a running back; he was a receiver. But are you going to see guys now? The running back's been devalued. You see more of those guys play corner, and just in general, with the money corners are making, are you going to see guys that maybe be okay receiver or first round corner decide to go corner? Chris Wheatley-Humphrey's a guy that can do both. I think Miami loves him, and they were extremely impressed with what he did at camp. He's someone that, sometimes they go to camp when they struggle, and you say, can we drop this guy? They saw at camp and they're like, all right, now their eyeballs are big, and they're real happy they got him committed.
I always wonder what would happen with DJ Dallas. Obviously, he's done well for himself in the NFL, but he was tinkering on the defensive side of the ball early in his Miami career. He could have been an interesting chess piece in these modern defenses.
And you let them play their position. You let them come to you. Clint Portis, Florida tried to make him a safety, came to Miami, one of the best running backs of all time. Marshall Faulk, Miami recruited him as a corner, and going to San Diego State, one of the greatest running backs of all time, Hall of Famer. So, you kind of let them tell you what they want to play, figure it out when they get here. And if they can't cut it at running back, boom, they got to go to corner. Or if they say, I want to go to corner, you let them do it. But give them a chance to play their preferred position and then go from there. But definitely put it in their ear, hey, there's money to be made.
So we will end the bank portion of this podcast here before we get into the Q&A with something that, again, these two guys have been asked about a lot on the live and on Twitter, on the board. At the receiver position, Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Wingo. We know that they're not giving up on Jeremiah Smith, obviously, especially with the recent events, the recent commitments, the Miami Gardens, Ravens guys. But Ryan Wingo is someone that they're continuing to recruit, and he's another nationally rated guy at his position. Yeah,
I think they're the two best receivers in the country, and the Trader's not that far behind them. You can pull up the rankings. I bet they're probably stacked pretty tight. But with respect to those two, Wingo's committing in December. Jeremiah Smith is flirting with every school south of Ohio. So both those guys to me are still firmly in play. And based on what I know, if Miami has a very good season on the field offensively, I think they're going to be in play to add one or both of those players or either one. I actually feel better about Smith, but I think there's a lot of confidence with both of them. And, look, if Smith was that committed to Ohio State, he wouldn't be doing all the stuff he's doing. I think he knows Ohio State's a very safe option. He'll go there. He'll be a first-round pick. You can't argue with the track record, and he's better than all those guys, or at least as good as a lot of them. Marvin Harrison's pretty special, but Smith is, at least from down here, is as good as I've seen since Andre Johnson. There's a lot of first-rounders in between. So he's better than Ennis, just athletic. He's faster, more explosive. This is a track guy, hurdles champion, taller, just more explosive, more acceleration, and more long speed. So he can play anywhere. He knows Ohio State's going to give him a safe option. I think he wants to be in Miami. This guy was tweeting during last year. The other is that he's flirting too much to just ignore it. I think Miami just needs to give him a reason. He got his teammates. Now, give him a reason, and I think they're going to have a great shot. If Miami has a season like they did with last year, where they went from hundreds in offense to top 30, that kind of improvement, I would predict Smith to Miami. That's got to happen. Hasn't happened yet. But, if that were to happen, I would predict Miami to get Jeremiah Smith. I think he's that much in play.
Great stuff, D, on the bank, as always. Again, you can see this in written form on the website. These updates come at least once a week sometimes. He also drops the ATM, which, maybe doesn't have the amount of information that the bank does, but still has some really good stuff. But D, we'll be moving along here to the Q&A portion.
Okay, first, before we get to the Q&A, I want you guys to take a look at the CanesInSight My Shopify. Got the link in the bio. You got the gear right here. All the great board slogans: Green Trail American, 15-0. All we back, all kinds of different board slogans, great designs, high quality shirts, and top of the classic CanesInSight, the CanesInSight hoodie, which I just ordered. Pete, make sure you send that to me so I can wear it on these winter trips. Excited to rep that. Again, the link is in the bio. Great quality. Ask about it. These are high quality. We went full speed on quality with those shirts. Also, if you want to spice up the summer, spice up the MLB, Underdog Fantasy link also in the bio. Promo code CIS or use the /CIS link in the bio to get $100 to start playing for being a CIS member. I got my picks in. I got Spencer Torkelson for the Tigers. I got him over 1.5 total bases. I got Julio Rodriguez over 7.5 fantasy points. Seattle Mariners. I like his momentum second half of the year. And then I got Miguel Cabrera under 0.5 strikeouts. So all those kind of bets you can lay down. $100 free to play. Underdog Fantasy promo code CIS. And last thing, Canes.Insight on Instagram. Pete, you put up great clips from your live show with the Miami Gardens Ravens. All kinds of stuff on there. Up to 3,000 followers. We just started it and only going up from there. So with that, let's get some questions.
On Threads. We're also on Threads. Don't forget the great Threads platform.
Yeah. Interesting how that goes. We put up the CanesInSight Q&A late this afternoon. We got a ton of replies, and we'll go through some questions from the CanesInSight community.
So we'll start with Damian Kane, 86, from the board, asking who is the most likely next commit.
I don't know anybody imminently, so this is not me being coy and saying this guy's next to commit because I know he's got a date for his, I don't know, uncle's brother's birthday or something. This is my prediction, but I would say Patterson, Zaquan Patterson. If not him, I think Camarion Franklin, they can lock that down when he visits on at the end of the month for the barbecue.
Next one here from A1 Kane. How's the 24 DB class looking to shape out, specifically the safety room?
Safety, I think they're real excited about. They love Isaiah Thomas from Clearwater, originally from Canada. You saw what Mario Cristobal did with a Canadian safety, Javon Holland, who They did a bunch of polls of executives on ESPN. Everybody pretty much had him in the top 5 young safeties. It's a Mario product that he plucked from Canada. I think Isaiah Thomas, different player, bigger type of player, but someone that they're really excited about. And everybody you talk to who's around him and seen him in play, they say this guy's a major blue chip stud. Tore his ACL at the end of the year, or the beginning of the season, I should say, last year. That hurt his ranking, but as I understand, he should be totally good to go, healthy for senior year. And they expect him to play like a 4-star. And then Patterson, top 100 player we mentioned, had a season, super athlete, played receiver, played corner, played safety, played linebacker-ish, that monster position for Chaminade. Very versatile, very athletic, good size, special teams player as well. Miami loves Patterson. So you get those two at safety, you're doing great. Dylan Day can't play safety. The defensive back from Baton Rouge has a lot of speed, probably in the 4.5 by the time he gets here at 6 foot plus. Very physical. I think he's probably more of a nickel, the ideal nickel for Guidry's system. Guidry's been after him at every stop he's offered him. Between Marshall, Tulane, now Miami. Wants him bad. I think probably more of a nickel, but he could also be a safety. So safety room is looking a lot better than corner. It's going to be interesting to see what Jalen Hayward from Rockledge does, who we talked about earlier, because he'll be a corner for Miami, not a safety.
Next one here from veteran CanesInSight poster goes to, who are you most excited to see this fall at the following positions: running back, receiver, and linebacker?
Running back, it would be between Mark Fletcher and AJ Allen. I think those two have a chance to emerge as the workhorse back. A lot of excitement about both of them. I know there's some questions about summer workouts. Both those guys have stood out there. I've been a long-time Fletcher fan, even when he was back committed to Ohio State. To me, this guy is he's kind of like an Alonzo Highsmith. Just does everything. Shocking size for his position, just a naturally big guy, and a great athlete. You saw him doing all those somersaults on his Instagram. So work ethic, size, athletic ability, football instincts, versatility. Mark Fletcher, and then also AJ Allen from Louisiana, Monroe, Louisiana, went to Nebraska, transferred to Miami. A lot of people in Nebraska thought he was going to emerge as one of the top backs in the Big Ten as a true freshman. Hurt his shoulder against Oklahoma, a game that he was really carrying the load early in the season. Fully healthy, like where AJ Allen was going to fit into this depth chart. So that's my running back position. What was the other one? Wide receiver. I'd say Colby Young, just to see how he plays at his new weight. I thought he looked great in spring. Obviously, he finished the year strong. I think we could see a level from him that maybe you didn't project for him, because now he's got a full season under his belt. He was at Binghamton before, small town kid, JUCO kid, not totally in shape when he got to Miami through no fault of his own. He got here late, but now you see him way slimmer than he was as a freshman during the season, way more confident because he's made plays. Guy with ball skills, guy with size, guy with play strength to finish when guys are covering him. Some run after catch explosiveness. I think he's going to be more explosive with his weight loss. So Colby Young's the guy I'm watching. And then also I'd put Jacoby George in there, someone who has the talent to be the number one receiver, you ask the players who the best receiver is. A lot of them are going to say Jacoby George because of his talent. Can he put it together and just really string good days, consistent days together so he can get on the field and produce, which he has not been able to do yet at Miami, but has the talent to do so and more.
And then linebacker.
Linebacker, I want to see Malik Bryant because he was out for spring, looks the part. I heard he's an alpha male personality-wise. He was that at IMG, was that at Orlando Jones. Hybrid. He has the speed to play linebacker. If you look at timed, I think he's a 4.6 time guy, but you don't know what those linebacker transitions until they actually do it. Really more of an edge rusher in high school. How's he going to look standing up? That's what I'm watching is Malik Bryant.
Okay, D, the next question here from Ziggy. Looking back at the 22 Miami class, who do you expect to make a big jump and play a big role this fall? Thinking Skinner, Kelly, Basanth, Moten, but curious who you have making the jump this year.
I like the list. Skinner's added weight. He looks stronger in spring. The question with him is going to be, number one, is he going to catch the ball consistently? Is he going to have that disciplined approach day in, day out? Is he going to be able to fend off Riley Williams, who's coming for those snaps, who's super talented, true freshman? But I like, he's one I'm more waiting and seeing on because he has the ability to be a major impact guy. Kelly, awesome spring. I feel very good about him being that breakthrough guy. Moden, I thought, had a really underrated spring, started all spring. Great first step, big body, looked really, really improved over the course of the year. And then into spring was beating Matt Lee a lot, including the spring game. Matt Lee being, what Miami considers an NFL center, Moden was beating him. So I like Moden. I like his ability to get in the rotation. We talked about him a ton on this podcast. Wesley, we'll see. Wesley's going to be pushed by the transfer Miami brought in from Louisville. He's going to be pushed by the other recruits. We're going to see what Wesley does because he's a guy, to me, he flashed, but I don't think he's unquestioned starter at that position. I think Miami, part of the reason why they brought in the Louisville transfer, and I'm struggling on his name, but part of the reason they brought in KJ Cloyd, size, speed linebacker from Louisville, who's projected to start at Louisville, Derek Nicholson coach, was to push Bissainthe and potentially unseat him. They don't want to just rely on Bissainthe. So that's going to be an interesting guy to watch. I'll tell you, I mentioned Kobe Young as far as a guy to break out from that class. Somebody else that I'm interested to see is Matt McCoy. Is Matt McCoy going to get an opportunity to play, and what's he going to show? I thought he looked good last camp at left tackle. He was a second-string left tackle, did a really nice job, surprised people because he had just shown up on campus. And I think Miami likes him more than the fans. No. And I'm curious to see what all the hype's about. He definitely looks big walking around.
So next one here from Bobby Digius. What does the board look like at cornerback?
Yeah, I think it's Bobby Digius. Shout out to the legendary Bobby Digital, Robert Diggs from the Wu-Tang Clan. What was the question?
The Wu-Tang Clan got you distracted. The board at cornerback, what does it look like?
I'm worried about it a little bit. I mean, I wish it was wider. That's why this Hayward thing's going to be so interesting because you bring in Hayward, now you have top 100 player at corner with speed and size. You have Ryan Mack, low ceiling, high floor kind of corner from St. Thomas, well schooled, has some speed coverage ability, and then you have OJ Frederick, who just transferred from Deerfield to St. Thomas, upside guy, also one of these Miami Gardens Ravens like Mack, somebody who killed it at Miami's camp, feels really, really good about his upside, more of a longer corner. So if you get Hayward, now you at least have that size, speed, upside guy to go along with guys that maybe are more local sure things with Mack, and then Frederick being maybe that wild card that you see go to a Louis school and then he's getting picked in the 3rd or 4th round. You're wondering how are these guys getting out of South Florida while our corners struggle. That's what the hope is with Frederick, is that you're keeping that guy home this time. But the board's not a huge board. That's why the Hayward thing's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out.
Moving on here from It's Dolph. Besides Taylor, Kitchens, James Williams, why was the 2021 class such an abject failure?
Well, look, jury's still out on some of those guys, but I would say they got into trouble 2 ways. Size and maybe some maturity stuff. So in terms of size, Troutman, maybe there's some maturity stuff there too. But he was, when you saw him, a great player, high school player, and flashed a little bit in Miami, but he was small. He looked like a safety. You saw him. Alan Hayes, same thing. Good, solid player, but small. Malik Curtis, skinny. Lawrence Seymour, small and overweight. So I think they got caught on some exceptions. And then just stuff. How many guys in that class, Franklin never really committed himself discipline-wise to losing weight. A Jacoby George, who has not been able to earn the trust of 2 coaching staffs. Still got time. By the way, all those guys still have time. I'm watching them when they transfer because I hope they just kill it. I hope Franklin slims down. And I've always was the first one hyping him, saying this guy should be a 1,000-yard back every year of his career from how productive he was at Chaminade. I mean, if you look at his production at Chaminade, 2,600 yards in a season. The guy was unreal. 2,400 yards, in a season. This guy was a super talent, but, college is a different animal and there's a lot of different expectations. So I think one or two of those things, maturity and just dimensions, doomed most of the guys that didn't make it. If you look at that class and look at that list, sometimes both.
Next question here from Canada. Canes, who will be the first WWE feud for the Cavender twins?
I don't know if they're training yet. I've been watching them close. I've not seen that happen yet. I've seen with the Heat games and stuff. It's not easy to be a WWE superstar. They're not putting in work like your girl Valerie Lareda, aka
Lola Vice.
She's doing great. Enjoying her. But I'd say first feud for those two girls. Tiffany Stratton. Next big thing in women's wrestling. Next Bianca Belair. You heard it here first on the CanesInSight podcast.
Canes are able with a question that a lot of people have had. Is Judd Anderson the only quarterback in this class, or are we after any big fish? I know the timing's tough here, especially with the portal. It's very tough to get someone to come in behind what they have now.
Well, and it could also be next year. It could be a transfer for next year. I do not think, and I've been pretty consistent on this, I would be very surprised if Judd Anderson is the only quarterback we add before next season. So not the season that's starting here in August, the season that follows, 2024. I would be very, very surprised if the only new quarterback on the roster is Judd, and it's Judd, Emery, and Jakari. I think we're going to have two new quarterbacks at least. Could it be two high school kids or a high school kid in the transfer? I think both options are still on the table. Despite what's been reported elsewhere, I think both options are both on the table, and I'd be shocked if it's not one of those two options. And they love Judd. I heard he's going to throw, and they expect him to tear it up, and they've heard awesome things in the offseason. He's been at 7-on-7 camps, really balling. They love everything about Judd. But to go in there with three quarterbacks like we're doing this year, not ideal.
And Judd's been great. It seems like with the recruiting class, been enthusiastic on social media and things of that nature. Great
interview with you. Check that interview on the YouTube. Again, like and subscribe. You get interviews with Judd Anderson, Juan Minaya, the Miami Gardens Ravens commits. You guys had
more coming. Have more coming as well. Certain guys that I've gone back and forth with that.
Derek Plaz was awesome. Derek Plaz, he's got his whole game plan.
Really enjoyed him. Yeah, really enjoyed talking to him for sure. Next question here from Trick. How many remaining targets? Any chance we circle back to Jose Leon? Really like that kid.
We talk about the Miami Gardens Ravens. Jose Leon is a Miami too. This is probably too convenient of a comp because you're talking about, a slot receiver that is European descent. He reminds me of Hunter Renfrow a little bit, the way he moves. I love that he's competed against the top guys from the beginning, kind of like Restrepo. He was like that. Restrepo was not coming from a very, shielded athletic background. He was up against the best always from a young age and had that confidence from, hey, I can beat anybody. I've gone against the best always, and I always did my thing. So, I'm pretty confident. I love Jose Leon. Is he going to fit in this class? I don't know. The numbers are going to be tight. You're talking about guys like Wingo and Jeremiah Smith, Lil Wayne McCoy. But Miami, and I'm saying this just a general statement, but I'm saying it for a reason. Miami is evaluating South Florida hard to see if anybody they're recruiting should not be a backup plan, but should be a priority target. And I think you'll see some new names emerge. So we'll see how that goes.
Very interesting. Next one here, Joe the Great wants to know about workouts, summer workouts, guys who are sticking out.
I mentioned Fletcher. I mentioned A.J. Allen. Marcellus Pullum I've talked about from Georgia, the linebacker from Atlanta. Underrated kid, but Miami thinks he was really impressive from a size speed standpoint when he showed up. Tommy Kinsler, freak of nature, size, speed, attitude is great. Josh Horton. I think we have another question about him coming up, but Josh Horton, defensive tackle. Jaden Davis from Oklahoma, I think is better in the weight room than people expected. And Robert Stafford, electrifying athlete. He's a guy, we mentioned Robbie Washington going from receiver to corner. Stafford's a guy that said maybe he plays receiver because he's so dynamic. When it's good to have options with these guys because that shows you they're athletes.
The U1984 has a couple questions here regarding the first one is regarding potential decommits. if the things don't go well this season? And then about Brandon Ennis, if he had been a 2022 recruit, would he have been a Cane? In other words, how bad the offense was this last year and turning him off. You've actually mentioned this a few times recently.
If Miami has a bad season, they're all up for grabs. You know, Kevin Riley's one that just because of his distance and the fact that Alabama wants him bad and they just lost out on a running back. He is someone I'll keep with a close eye on, but not because of anything he did. I heard he's very solid to Miami. But, you know, when Alabama wants you bad, they always got a chance. So he's one just because distance, where he's around, the type of schools around him. You know, that'd be one to watch, but there's nothing imminent there. It's like with Tommy Kinsler last year. I had a similar question last year in one of the Q&As. I said Tommy Kinsler because the Gators are trying to lurk on him. He's from Ocala. He stayed true, came to Miami even with a bad year. So just because Miami's keeping an eye on a guy doesn't mean that he's shaky. It just means, you know, being realistic about situations.
And then the Brandon Ennis follow-up question there.
I think it would have been a Cane if the Canes gave him any reason to be a Cane. The money was there, the love was there. He would have been a Cane. I think that was strictly about safe situation with Ohio State, terrible situation on the field with Miami. It was that simple.
Sinister Kane asking about Emory Williams. Has he solidified himself as QB2 heading into fall practice over Ja'Cory Brown?
No. I don't think it's been solidified, number one. Number two, Miami has a super high opinion of Ja'Cory Brown. I think Emory Williams had a great spring, and I think is more physically good from an arm strength standpoint than I thought he was. But the worst performance from Ja'Cory Brown was the spring game, which was one of Emory's best. Emory had other good ones. It wasn't like he was bad in spring. He was very good, actually. But Ja'Cory had some really great moments in scrimmages, just happened to play horrible when everybody was watching. So maybe that's coloring people's perceptions. But Miami loves Ja'Cory Brown. He was caught in a very bad situation on offense that hurt everybody's production. That Georgia Tech game to me stands out as him being poised, being ready for the moment, and making a lot of nice plays and showing off a lot of tools. So I like Ja'Cory Brown too. And I think I'd say he's the second. He certainly was in spring as far as the reps, that he was the second quarterback the whole spring. And I don't think that will change, but it's a competition. Emory Williams has been working hard, and if he comes in and takes the job, he takes the job. But don't sleep on Ja'Cory because of the spring game.
Bill the Cane with a question. We all know Mario can recruit. Is there any evidence the staff can compete with the big programs in terms of developing players? And that obviously means getting more with less.
Well, look, Mario's put guys in the pros that play and make an impact. You know, Kayvon Thibodeau didn't just go to the pros. He didn't just – Kayvon Thibodeau was a big recruit, but not all these big recruits pan out. He went from a top recruit to a top 10 pick to a top 10 pick that played well. So all those things were checked. Javon Holland, same thing. He went from a good recruit. I don't think he was even the highest recruit. He was probably, I think it was like to look it up, but he was a 4-star, but he wasn't like, you know, a top 50 player, I don't believe. Ended up sitting out the COVID year. I'm looking up his stats, right? His recruiting ranking now. He ended up sitting out the COVID year, so Cristobal didn't coach him then. To Dolphins, and turned out to be one of the best safeties in the NFL. So he was the 138th recruit. So that's an example of someone that was a good recruiting land, but was developed to be something greater than what he was recruited to be. So these are guys that were developed. Penei Sewell. Again, I mentioned the executive poll, which I always read from the top executives, or the executives give their top 10 players at every position. I think Sewell is like the 7th or something offensive tackle. So yeah, was Penei Sewell a big recruit? Sure. I'm looking up the ranking right now. He was not as big a recruit as the two guys we signed last year. I'll tell you that. Penei Sewell as a recruit was the 53rd ranked player in the country, a 4-star. Big recruit. But I mean, Francis Malgo's top 10 player in the country. Samson Okunlola, 21st something player in the country. He's both 5 stars. So within that top 30. And he took Penei Sewell and made him a top 10 pick, and also made him someone who went into the pros, switched positions, and became one of the best right tackles in the league last year. One of the best tackles in the league, period. So, yeah, he's getting these guys that are highly ranked, but they are developing. It's not like, Texas A&M, you could have questions about development because they're signing a lot of guys and they're not playing well. Texas, probably a better example, because Texas A&M has some good pros. Texas, what's the last good pro Texas put out? They don't really develop. We'll see how Bijan Robinson does. He's pretty hard to screw up, but most of those guys have been huge busts at the college level and get to the pros. So, and then the Gators, of course, have produced a lot of guys that were higher picks, and then they go to the pros and they're complete busts pretty much every year. So Cristobal's developed guys that go to the pros. They're recruited high, they get drafted high, and then they go to the pros and perform. That's what you want.
Next question here from Ben. What happened with Chris Graves?
I was the biggest Chris Graves fan ever. Someone else asked the question, why are you lying about Chris Graves? Physically, the guy had the size. He was tough. He was a receiver in high school, had the ball skills, the speed. He has, I don't say had it all, he has it all. The guy's super talented. And I think when Cristobal got here, he said this was a good take by Manny. Some of the guys, when Cristobal came, he said, how do we take this guy? Or this guy was a 4-star, he sucks. They liked Graves. Maturity, the guy came in young to Miami. I think he was like 17 when he got on campus, sort of like Nigel Kelly as far as his age, being young for his grade. And it just never really strung to the consistency from a preparation off the field kind of standpoint. And that's really the story there. Tools-wise, he's as advertised, bright future if he goes in the right program and harnesses those tools. He flashed in Miami. They liked the talent, but they couldn't trust him. That's why you saw so many transfers.
Ed Hunter with a question here on Josh Horton.
Yeah, Horton's a guy Miami's super excited about as far as they liked him coming in. Now they've seen him on campus, and he's delivered in the workouts. So now they're excited to see him put the pads on. But he's someone that, they are very happy with that evaluation at this point. They think he's super athletic, very young, upside, needs to grow his grown man strength, grow a mustache, but he's got a lot of upside. Got what they want from a frame and athletic standpoint.
Our good friend Steve Kim wants to know what a 9-10 win season does for recruiting.
Huge. Top 5 class if you talk about 9-10.
365 Canes football. Who is a player you think that if they pop, would go on a spree afterwards due to it happening?
First of all, subscribe to 365 Canes football. Our guy Stevo on YouTube and everywhere else. Like a momentum generating kind of guy, but Patterson, I think, would keep that momentum alive.
Margot Robbie, is she mid? This is from Mark Chandler.
I mean, of course she is, definitely not mid. But I want to just give some love to the original Margot Robbie of my generation, Jamie Presley. If you know, you know. A little before your time, but that was the first Margot Robbie.
I don't know who Margot Robbie is.
No, yeah, that's right. You don't watch TV.
Next one here from Transit Kane. What is the real story on TJ Capers? Why was he given up on, committed to Louisville in January, and that was it? He'd be a top 3 recruit in our class right now.
Well, again, do you see other schools, big schools after him? You got to wonder. I think the story with him, good size, good speed, inconsistent tape, not great reports from people locally, and tweener between linebacker and defensive end. I think Louisville's a perfect spot for him. They love guys like that. They got a couple of those guys drafted last year, those kind of hybrid tweeners. You call them tweener or hybrid, how you like them. But he's someone that fits their defense well, is a good fit for him. But Miami was not the only big school in the past.
Last question here from AGO Gut. Why is there not a lot of talk of Jamari Howard when it comes to the Canes recruiting? Huge need, and he's highly ranked. Are they going after him?
Big guy, great speed. I saw him at camp a couple years ago. He has not played enough football. I think they want to see him at Central. Similar deal where big name recruit, top 100 player, local, but you don't see people knocking down the door like they are for some of these other kids. It's not because the guy can't play. I think more so with him, it's getting more exposure to him. He's a guy that can go to Central and tear it up, and every school in the country is going to be banging down his door. I think it's more of a wait and see with him.
So once again, like and subscribe to this podcast. We will be going live, as we always do, on Thursday nights for the CanesInSight Live. Had the special edition one. If you have not watched it, the Purple Machine, the Miami Gardens Ravens, JoJo Trader, Vincent Shavers, and Chance Robinson all joined the show. We were on talking with them for about 30 minutes. It was great. You get a real idea and a sense of their personalities and how serious they are about winning and taking it to the next level when they get to Miami. D, appreciate your insight as always. This was a long episode tonight. It was an hour long, so you left it all out there for the Canes fans.
Yes, sir. Go Canes.
Go Canes.